Thank you to everyone who subscribed, liked, commented, everybody who has listened to a commentary on this channel and come back. To everyone who shares something from the heart, you are appreciated. Shout out to all of Chappelle's people. Sky Zone and T. Stevens, I appreciate your spirit of love and your spirit of I'll check you if I have to. Kudos to all the vloggers making people think, offering a factual counter narrative to mainstream media's deceitful narrative on Kells. Because they're back at work slandering him, using slick comments, and when they report about him coming out of solitary confinement, and it's about to pick up again, they're going to focus the attention back on R. Kelly. Well, I'll say I'm glad he's out of solitary confinement. When he was in there, I just focused on the light. It was, I felt when I would get those feelings of feeling bad, like, oh my God, he's in solitary confinement. Is he going to lose his mind? I had to remember who we're dealing with. This is a man of faith, so I knew that he was strong. And I also know that I looked at that period of solitary confinement for him as a period of isolation so he can get stronger. Because I know when you're facing those life and death, those situations that feel like life or death situations, God secludes you. And in that seclusion, you receive what you need to carry with you that makes you even more equipped to handle other challenges that come to you. And you're getting, really, that's like your point of victory a lot of times. I'm sure God spoke to him in that moment that gave him some reassurance that he's going to be okay. And that's going to carry him through. That's why God's warriors are more than conquerors, because it's just victory after victory after victory. So I hold to the perfect vision of victory for R. Kelly that will come through God. And I say I stand in faith with him because that is the one thing about the interview that he did with Gayle King that was, as far as I'm concerned, was the purpose for us to even see it, is when he stood up and said, I will come through this. So I stand with you that you will come through this. I watched the Dave Chappelle comedy special because somebody implied that I would like what he had to say about R. Kelly. And I did not. I loved when he called Dream Hampton out for being a liar and saying when she invited him to appear in her propaganda piece that he said no because he didn't know R. Kelly. Him saying that took away some of the disappointment I felt when he said if he was a betting man, he'd bet that he did it. So I was wondering if he was trying to show the audience how contradictory it was to say that you're sure he did it, although circumstances surrounding the allegations are faulty. Overall, I wasn't mad. I watched it. I enjoyed it. I agreed with most of what he said. The things he said ring true with many people, I think. I believe many people feel exactly what he was saying. Mainstream media doesn't want you to be able to think that way. So they said things like skip over it, his power is diminished, he's lost his comic touch, he's reckless, and all of that was hilarious to me because they're saying he's worthless, nothing to consider, done, weak, because they have to control the narrative and he's not pushing their agenda. They don't want people to start questioning their agenda or being aware that there is an agenda. Their goal is to stop you from forming your own opinion and making your own moral judgment. You have to think and speak how they tell you. They make it appear that many people thought it was subpar and most people don't agree with him, especially those educated writers and critics. If you subscribe to what Chappelle is saying, if you agree with him, you too are reckless. Your opinion is not worth turning into. Those jokes are not funny. You're weak. That's what they're really saying. That's the message they want to get across. That you thinking like this is the wrong way to think. I respect Dave Chappelle for giving an opinion that challenges the status quo and giving the system a counterattack, clapping back at bullies that try to force you to accept whatever they say. You got to respect him for showing what it looks like to be free to say what you want because you don't need the networks to make money. And it felt good to see a black entertainer talking for the people and not talking like a sellout, especially after hearing Jay-Z explain why black men getting murdered by the police is black people's fault. He made it clear he wasn't talking about the police killing or murdering black men when he avoided using the words black, murder, and killing. He was talking about males that come from homes similar to his, single mother homes, that have a bad attitude because their father's not there. And because of their bad attitude, they lose their life to the cops. How can we call him hip-hop royalty? Hip-hop was born from the voice of the street. White record companies adopted hip-hop and directed the voice by deciding who was hot, who was not, and they marketed it as the voice of the street. The NFL created multi-million-dollar businesses off black men. 70% of the players are black. Networks get millions of dollars from sponsors for Super Bowl. And the black athletes that bring the fans, that make it happen, aren't allowed to use that platform to speak against racial injustice. And Sean Carter let us know he's cool with that, talking to us like we're stupid. The protest was never about a job. Boycotting the NFL was a result of the NFL standing with white supremacy and not cap. They allowed the president's narrative about disrespecting the anthem and flag to continue and take the focus off police brutality. Sidestepping over the NFL stand with white supremacy for a check and blaming black people for the state-sanctioned violence against them is not repping black people. We might be past kneeling, but we're not past systemic racism and police terrorizing black people. Police bullying and murdering black people has increased since the knee. Black people's lives are at stake. Racism harms black people 24/7. Facts. Black people are targeted by legal and extra-legal acts of violence on local and national levels. It's silly for black people to support black entertainers that mislead, misinform, and trick black people. Spending money to wear some athlete's jersey or see someone sing or dance on stage could be invested in our empowerment. Why isn't our philosophy, I lift black people that lift black people? When it's time for these celebrities to build or stand against the injustice inflicted upon the community that made them, they abandon ship. Instead of using some of their wealth to invest in a community that they came from, they contribute to crushing it. They make the oppressor class wealthier, and that increases the oppressor class's ability to victimize black people. The founders of the foundations the NFL Jayz 400K is being donated to are white. The foundations may use pictures of black boys for their face, but white people collect the check and decide how the money is distributed. This doesn't empower black youth. Look at what black celebrities brag about and what they spend money on. Designer clothes, top shelf liquor, cars. That is what they prioritize. White supremacy's toys for white supremacy's validation. They spend millions for one home to live in an upscale white community instead of buying many homes in a neighborhood and making it into an upscale black community. They send their kids to Ivy League schools, contribute to campaigns of black politicians that aid and abet the system of white supremacy. Why should we buy the music, go to the concerts, vote or watch black people that dismiss racism when it matters and pretend that racism isn't a culprit when it is? Denying racism is playing along with it. Black people are facing extermination, and instead of looking at it, people want to deny it's happening or don't believe that it's possible that we can be exterminated. We can't go on spending money that we don't have on dumb shit like these sellout entertainers, hair weaves 365 days, several pairs of $200 sneakers. If we keep investing in people and things that don't bring no return, we can't expect to survive. It's that serious out here. We have to move different, change our strategy, get our mind right so we can act right. Acting right is putting ourselves in a position to dismantle systems that participate in our destruction. Thinking about what kind of business you're going to start might be hard. You may not know what you want to do. You might not even want to. Like myself, I really didn't want to start a business, but I see that there's no other way. Me not doing it is just going to make the kid be in a tougher position. My tongue got tied on that because, again, I have faith, so I don't think that my child will be in a tougher position, of course, right? But it's a reality. It's still something like, yeah, I have faith, but that's what God is telling me to do. Look, do what you do, but turn it into profit. And you got to find a way to do that. And really, that's why I say I don't get too stressed, because I know that God will show you a way in what you have to do. Anyway, many black people don't get that. They think what Jay-Z is doing is admirable. They just don't get it. They think that what he's doing is going to benefit black society. They don't think we should be boycotting the NFL because it isn't the owners killing black men or because Kaepernick got a check. Some of them, even after knowing that the NFL is running the white supremacist con game on them, still won't sever ties with the NFL. It's embarrassing that black people whore themselves out for small treats so easily instead of putting themselves in a position of power. Football is not that important. Black people that can't sacrifice football may need to examine their priorities. Dick Gregory said he didn't watch football because it reminded him of the plantation. He knew what he was looking at. This is a time of extremities, and evidence is not the loudest voice. The loudest voice is one of deception. It says, black people are the problem. They're always blaming racism that doesn't exist for all their problems. And that's the loudest voice. It is the unspoken message in many narratives. Video of cops murdering niggas in cold blood means nothing. The cops walk and get paid because juries declare them not guilty, even though there is solid evidence showing they are. So not only are black people up against the system, black people are up against society. Civilians make up the juries that see evidence of brutal force, unnecessary aggression, and sometimes malicious attempt, and come to the conclusion it was justified. Philandro Castile was murdered in front of his lady and child for cooperating with an officer. The video shows Castile complying. He wasn't rude at all, and the officer, in a panic, loaded 4 shots into him. The officer was acquitted and awarded $45,000 because a jury of our peers looked at the video and concluded that it was well-grounded to fear someone because they're black. A gang of cops were filmed wrestling Eric Gardner to the ground. You hear Eric begging to breathe moments before Officer Daniel Pantaleo choked him to death using an illegal chokehold. It was an unnecessary takedown. He wasn't even aware he was getting arrested, and a grand jury found no reasonable cause to indict, even though the city medical examiner confirmed the death was homicide from neck compression. Pantaleo sat on desk duty, getting his $85,000 a year salary for 5 years until he finally got fired for the incident last month. His pal set up a GoFundMe page, and not even a month later, he has already received over $100,000. The GoFundMe page reads, Mayor de Blasio's anti-police rhetoric contributed towards the decision to fire him. Let's help an officer in need who was only doing his job. It's the least we can do for a brother in blue with a newborn and bills to pay. The media pushes this false narrative about Eric Gardner selling cigarettes. The police commissioner said, too bad his health was so bad he couldn't take a small scuffle with the police. He should have thought about that before he resisted arrest. The witness who recorded the video explains a different story. He says Eric was breaking up a fight. And I put the link to the full video of what happened with the witness's account of events. Click it and see how mainstream media story compares to the story of the person recording the video. It's also good to click it so that you can just see, because even though this was 5 years ago, you probably saw the video, you can see the video in full, see what you've only saw on the news report, which is the end of the video. When you look at the whole video, you can see that it wasn't even about him resisting arrest, because they just watch the video. We need to be reminded of really what can happen, because they tried to put it forth like, oh, so you put in your mind, oh, but he was doing the wrong thing. This video will just show you that it's not even about whether you're doing the wrong thing or the right thing. Media coverage on Pantaleo's firing is filled with sympathy for him. You have police officers speaking out against him being punished. In Pantaleo's case, the media points out how the police officers are really indicted. But when they're covering Officer Muhammad Noor being sentenced to 12.5 years for what was a clear mistake, they decided that they're not going to insert that information, that officers really get indicted. And in his case, there was no sympathy directed towards him. It was all directed towards the victim's family. There was no GoFundMe, no police officers saying he was just doing his job. It was reported that, numerous letters were sent to the court on Muhammad Noor's behalf, but they weren't read aloud. So here's the message that I get from that. A non-white cop better not make a mistake killing or harming a white person, or they will pay. But a cop that kills a black person, even maliciously, is justified. The officer that murdered Eric Gardner by holding him in a chokehold had the chance to rethink what he was doing. Eric Gardner was heard saying he can't breathe 11 times. When a white cop gets slighted, gets slightly punished, I should say, for abusing black people, we end up seeing white people up in arms. Compare the media coverage of the story following Officer Noor's verdict to the stories that followed the verdicts of Jason Van Dyke, Daniel Pantaleo, and Daniel Holtcaust's trials. And were people out there rallying to get them out or to change the decision? How are we going to get free if we keep sucking up the propaganda? Feeding yourself a diet of lies will never elevate your consciousness. And raising the level of awareness is what brings change. We have to stop running from the problems we face by letting other people tell us we aren't facing the problems. It's just imagined. Truth brings understanding and freedom. And you have white people out here thinking that they're not racist because they're a good person. And black people out here thinking they can consume their way to equality. You have people out here thinking racism and white supremacy is a hoax. Like R. Kelly wrote and sang, "My sisters, my brothers, we need to stop choking on the truth and start smoking on a plan." White people that claim to disapprove of racism or don't support racism have work to do also. They have to acknowledge that they have a bias and examine their bias by doing some truthful retrospection. Because when they keep insisting that they're not racist or that they don't have a bias, it doesn't exist within them, they're contributing to upholding racism. And you can't change what you won't confront. And black people, black brothers and sisters, stop thinking change has to come from white people and designing your actions hoping to change them, change the way they feel about you, and change the way they think about you or perceive you. We have to bring the change. Thanks for listening. Take it in and win.